Tony Windsor's my name, and this is the second time I've spoken in this great hall, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I think in all our lives there are moments that are pretty special in relation to what we do with our lives. And I've been fortunate enough to have a number of those. After my father was killed in an accident when I was 8, I had a very, very good male school teacher at primary school. Made a lot of difference. When I was 16, I read a book, and it's this book. You probably won't see it from there, but it's by the author Leon Uris, and it's Mila 18, about the Warsaw ghetto, the way in which 350,000 Polish Jews were herded into what became, obviously a walled-off ghetto, and the atrocities that occurred within that precinct were quite horrible. At that time, at a fairly young age of 16, I haven't read the book since. I was going to when I knew I was coming down here, but I thought, no, I'll let the memories of it stay as I had them then. And as a 16-year-old, you grow up in a fairly idyllic world, I guess, cowboys and Indians, and there's a certain fun in terms of war games, kids chasing each other with sticks and things, imitation rifles. But when I read this book, it really brought home to me the savagery of war, the way in which man can bring himself to carry out atrocities. And in the Warsaw ghetto, 350,000 Jews were in there to start with, and many thousands and thousands of them were executed or taken to work camps and eventually executed by the Germans. The part that's heartening about Leon Uris's book, and he wrote a number of books about the Jewish issues in Germany and Poland and other parts of Europe and the creation of Israel, but rather than sit back and just see their people slaughtered over time, a group of Polish Jews decided to fight back. And in doing so, in some ways, and this book is fiction, of course, but in doing so, the author creates the pathway to the creation of the Jewish state. But also in doing so, it shows the personal relationships that people have with each other in those dreadful circumstances. And the characters that come out of the book really bring that message home. Rather than sit back and let the extermination of their people occur, they decided to fight back. And for 42 days and 42 nights, they withheld the might of the German army. Tens of thousands of Polish Jews were killed during that 42 days. Hundreds of German soldiers were killed as well with makeshift weapons and other rifles and pistols that they could obtain from the various battles that they were involved in. The whole nation of Poland fell to the German army within a month prior to that. So for a group of people to withstand that might for 42 days, it was quite incredible. Some did survive. Many survived, actually, and went on to different parts of Europe and Israel at a later time. But it always stuck with me. It brought home the atrocity of war. And it did another thing that I think has helped me in politics in a sense. It brought home the way in which propaganda is used to create fear within a population. What the Germans did at that particular time was create this image of the Jewish people in terms of disease and a whole range of other almost animal characteristics that were given to them, so that the population would actually turn against them. And we've seen that in this country in recent years. We've seen the use of propaganda to actually drive agendas and frighten people and create myths about various religious groups or others where the political process can actually achieve an objective. We saw it with children overboard. We saw it with weapons of mass destruction. And we're living through a period of time now, not as bad as it was with that other fellow that was in power, but we are living through a time where we should look back at some of the lessons in these books. I look back and think, what would I do in those circumstances? Why did people just turn a blind eye and let it happen? How could a population be so frightened that it allowed the extermination of a people to take place, that they developed attitudes to a group of people who weren't their natural enemy, but it became a way of creating a diversion, in a sense, so that the German people could be brought together and held together by a propaganda machine. So this book has been pretty special to me, as has some of the others that Uris wrote as well. And I'd urge you to have a look at it. It's in very small print, or it used to be. But it reminds me of a phrase that I use quite often, which goes to the heart of why this group of people decided to say no and fight. And the phrase that I use, particularly with school kids, or used to, is that the world is run by those who turn up. And if people turn up and stare down propaganda and fear when they see it, rather than just bow their heads and allow it to go on, you can stop the machine. You can stop the vitriol and hatred that's often perpetrated towards various groups in our community. So I thank this book. Hopefully it has helped me in a political sense. It's definitely helped me in a personal sense over many years, because about 47 years since I read it. I thank this book for the contribution to my life, and I would encourage any of you who are interested in that period of our history to look at the circumstances and question where we are today in terms of that context. Thank you very much.